This is Ask the Governor on the Louisiana Radio Network.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Inkster, your moderator, and this is the 39th edition of Ask the Governor with Governor John Bel Edwards, who is at your service, and the number again is 877-217-5757, June 20th, 2019, and in-house also with the governor is Pat Forbes, who heads the Office of Community Development, and they're here to talk about many matters. The governor, of course, is here to survey your attention on any subject you so desire, but Pat Forbes, of course, is a man who is involved in cleanups after catastrophes, and there was a big one in 2016 that is ongoing. And Governor and Mr. Forbes, I know you have some information, some good and perhaps some disappointing. What's going on?
Thank you, Jim. It's good to be with you. I think this is the 39th show, but the first one we've done on a Thursday. Appreciate the opportunity to be back with you. So on last Friday, we received notice unofficially that Housing and Urban Development, HUD, out of Washington, D.C., had issued guidance, and it actually was posted today on the Federal Register notice. It becomes official 5 days from today, and it deals with the duplication of benefits provision that was in the legislation passed by Congress about 8 months ago. So we've gotten our first definitive guidance. We know that a state action plan is going to be required to implement part of it, and we're not sure that we're going to have a state action plan for all of the relief that we plan to provide and hope to provide. But a lot of people have questions about that. And so I thought today we could have Pat Forbes kind of go through what HUD is telling us, what the people in the Restore program can expect, and then obviously we hope to get some phone calls today on this subject, but he's going to give the contact information for those individuals who do have questions and want to be able to call in. And before I hand it off to Pat, I do want to say that no homeowner in the Restore program has to do anything right now. They are all going to be contacted individually by the folks running Restore Louisiana. But we're moving forward as fast as we can, and we want to get as much relief into the hands of the homeowners as quickly as we can now that this guidance is out there. And with that, I'd ask Pat to kind of go into the details.
Thank you, Governor. Right. So what we have now is the official guidance, which is essentially the rules that accompanies the law that was passed last fall. And so what HUD has said is that we have to provide them a new plan for how we plan to spend our money. That's what they call the action plan. And there is a distinction, though, in these rules, and it's an important distinction. The distinction is whether funds were drawn from an approved SBA loan amount or whether they were not drawn. And some people drew partially and left some undrawn. Our contention is that we don't need to go through this action plan amendment process for those funds that people never got from SBA. And so we would be able to help them very quickly, within weeks, not months. But what's also very clear in this guidance that they provided Friday and made official today is that we will have to submit a new plan for funds that people drew on their SBA loans. Some people drew the whole thing, some people drew partial amounts. Whatever that amount is, we have to get an approved action plan amendment from HUD before we can start dispersing those funds.
Was this somewhat of a setback?
I don't know that I would call it a setback. We didn't really know exactly what to expect, but we had a call with them yesterday. The one disappointing thing that we heard yesterday that we did not interpret in the same way was that we may need this substantial action plan amendment even for the undrawn amounts. We're arguing that now with HUD. We're having a conversation with them about whether that applies to us. The other somewhat disappointing thing about it is that they are also requiring for those folks over 120% of area median income that they're going to have to prove a financial hardship to be able to have us pay off the amount of SBA drawn funds that they've made. So that's not, none of us saw that in the language that was passed last fall. We were absolutely hopeful that we were just going to be able to wipe out every single bit of every SBA loan, and we've got the funds available to do that. But this language says we've got to go demonstrate hardship. Now, how we do that is that the devil is in the details there, because we've got to get the criteria for that hardship determination approved by HUD, and then HUD will approve every single individual hardship case that we put to them.
Governor, the congressional delegation certainly worked hard on this, as did your office, and there have been ups and downs, and it's remarkable that almost 3 years later there's still some uncertainty.
Yeah, it is. And by the way, we're not unique in this because the duplication of benefits language that we're talking about impacts other states that received community development community development block grant funding from disasters in 17 and 18 as well. So we're not unique. I do appreciate the fact that the congressional delegation worked so hard to get the fix that Congress did pass last fall. And we still are working with them. In fact, we had a conference call with staff members of every member of the congressional delegation yesterday on this particular issue. And we're going to work through this just as quickly as we possibly can. I do want to make sure that people know that as it relates to the drawn amounts, so whatever loan amount came from the Small Business Administration, to the extent that we can help with that amount, those checks will be payable to the homeowners and to the Small Business Administration. So it's basically going to pay off that debt, which is still a substantial benefit to the homeowner. And we're looking forward to being able to do that just as quickly as possible.
Again, your number is 877-217-5757. The governor with Pat Forbes, who heads the Office of Community Development, and there has been a huge development regarding HUD and what happened in 2016 with the historic flood that enveloped Louisiana, and I know many were affected. And if you have a question regarding this or anything else, please give us a call, 877-217-5757. And before we go to the break, Governor, I know you and others, everybody around the state mourns the loss of a high school football player from your alma mater.
Yeah, Terrence Allen, and that's sad. It's tragic, and I guess it hits home when you know the family and you know the individual. In fact, Donna taught Terrence music at Amite Elementary School, and so it's very sad. And our thoughts and prayers are going out to the family.
Again, 877-217-5757. J.C. Kane is producing. This is Ask the Governor, and we will return with Governor John Bel Edwards and Pat Forbes after this brief timeout. This is Ask the Governor, and Governor John Bel Edwards is in house, along with Pat Forbes, head of the Office of Community Development. And the number is 877-217-5757. And we go to the phone lines for the first time today. We go to Mike in New Iberia.
A directive from Beck.
Thank you, Governor. We're 3 weeks into hurricane season. What's our levee preparedness? Both clay and T-walls, will these be up to the task? I'll take the answer off there. Thank you for making yourself available.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And by the way, you're exactly right. We're now in hurricane season, and this gives me an opportunity to ask the people of Louisiana to pay attention to this and get a game plan. Go to getagameplan.org. Make sure that they know that they are responsible for the first 72 hours after a disaster hits. And, of course, we're going to get to them just as soon as we possibly can, us and our local partners and so forth. But we ask every family to have a plan to make it on for the first 72 hours and then to follow closely weather forecasts, but also directives from state and local government. Now, with respect to our levees, we feel good because we know that we've had record investment since Hurricane Katrina, especially in the hurricane risk reduction system in and around New Orleans, and that system is the strongest it's ever been. And with respect to the emphasis that has been placed down there with the Sewage and Water Board on generating electricity and running pumps and so forth, we feel really good about it. However, we know that it just takes one hurricane that hits you at the right spot, and it doesn't have to be a Category 4, by the way, or it could be a slow-moving Category 1 that can do an awful lot of damage. So we take nothing for granted, but we feel prepared. We've done our exercises working with local government, both in South Louisiana and in North Louisiana this year, unlike years past. But we feel pretty good about the levee system and our preparedness. And unfortunately, we have a lot of experience when it comes to hurricanes and other disasters. But fortunately, when we need people to respond, we have experienced people, whether it's the National Guard, Wildlife and Fisheries, State Police, you name it, as well as all of our local partners, and of course the faith-based community and nonprofit organizations in Louisiana are superb. So the bottom line is we feel like we're prepared, and we're preparing for the worst and certainly praying for the best.
James in Longview, Texas. James, good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor. Hi, James. Oops. JC is trying to steer me to the right call, and let's go. I think we've got James waiting in the wings, but let's go to Tony in Baton Rouge. Tony, you're on Ask the Governor.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Tony.
Thank you for taking my call, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious, the new median dividers around Highland Road going down towards New Orleans, there's no way that the water can get dammed up because there's no holes in the concrete. As you recall, when we had the 2016, that was one of the allegations and part of the pending lawsuit on I-12 that the interstate acted as a dam. And I'm just wondering, are they going to go back and put some holes in there for the water? Because the new section in Lafayette, they've got what I would call drainage holes every 50 to 100 feet.
Yeah, and Tony, I noticed the other day that there were some also out on I-12 in some new construction as well. As you probably know, you're never supposed to construct an interstate in an area where you envision water overtopping. Because you elevate it, you make sure there's subsurface drainage that's sufficient and so forth. I don't have an answer for you off the top of my head about this particular aspect of the construction. But Tony, if you will give your name and number to Micah, who we will make sure that you get a call from the Department of Transportation, they'll be able to answer that particular question.
Nicole in Baton Rouge. Good afternoon, Nicole. You're on Ask the Governor with Governor Edwards and Pat Forbes. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, thanks for taking my call, guys. I saw that the Democratic Governors Association takes a lot of money from Planned Parenthood, and I'm just wondering, like, how can you take their money? I just really thought you were pro-life.
Well, I think, Nicole, if you've been paying attention, you know that I'm pro-life. And I'm not sure whether the Democratic Governors Association gets money from Planned Parenthood or not. I just don't know. But if you look at my record as a legislator over 8 years and as governor, including this particular session, you know that I'm pro-life. But you also know that my pro-life views extend beyond that particular issue because I happen to believe that the Medicaid expansion is itself a pro-life position. And there are many people alive in Louisiana today because they have health insurance that they would not have otherwise.
877-217-5757 is your number. And Joey in Baton Rouge is on the line. Hi, Joey. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Jim. Thank you very much, and good morning. Good afternoon, Governor.
Thank you, Joey.
Just a comment. I think you're doing an outstanding job, you and your administration, and really appreciate what y'all have done for the state in your 4-year tender. I had one question, and I'll take the answer off the air. As it is today, in state group, you're allowed to carry your dependent or your son or daughter to age 26 if they're in school. And I was curious if there was a possibility, or if y'all might be able to consider extending that to age 28. It is a healthy class, a group of individuals that would be on at age 28.
Joey, thank you very much, and I appreciate that. As I understand it, you're talking about the officer group benefits. So you're talking about certain retirees, but also state workers who are covered through OGB, and I know that I kept my daughter on my insurance through the age of 26, and that happens to be when she got married, and got a job in the East Baton Rouge school system, and I was very happy about that, by the way. But that's actually a feature of the Affordable Care Act as well. And one of the things that is actually at risk if the Affordable Care Act in its entirety is nullified. And certainly I don't want that to happen because of protections for pre-existing conditions, the Medicaid expansion, but also this is one of those features as well. I'll have to get with the Commissioner of Administration, Jay Darden, and Tommy Teague, who runs the Office of Group Benefits. I'm not sure what sort of actuarial costs there would be to doing that. That would be the main impediment, I think, to extending the age to 28. But Joey, thank you for the call, and I'll take a look at it.
Siobhan in New Orleans, actually in Metairie. Siobhan, you're on Ask the Governor. Good afternoon.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, Siobhan.
My question, yes, absolutely. My question is, what are your solutions for properly addressing environmental racism that is happening currently in Death Alley and to various other communities of color in Louisiana?
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
And
short. Go ahead, Siobhan.
Georgetown.
Where is the other place you're citing?
Desiree area, New Orleans, as well as Georgetown.
Well, Siobhan, thank you very much for the call. And obviously, we are making sure through the Department of Environmental Quality that we uphold the standards that are the actionable standards that we have with respect to emissions and so forth, and that to the maximum extent possible, we make sure that industrial plants implement best standards. And I'm not getting the terminology exactly right there, but we also work with local officials in all of these areas, whether they are legislators or parish presidents, police drawers, to make sure that we're addressing whatever concerns that we have. And then we take enforcement seriously when there's a violation of an existing standard. Best available technology was the terminology that I was looking for a while ago, and it just wouldn't come to me. But Siobhan, I thank you very much for the call.
James in Longview, Texas. Hi, James. Welcome back.
Hi there, Jim, and good afternoon, Governor. Anyhow,
James.
Basically, I hope you're doing fine. Anyhow, I was reading in the news that you're pushing for aid to help the seafood industry, and I just want to know a few of your measures you hope to take to help seafood producers.
Well, thank you. We've got so much fresh water coming down the Mississippi River, and then with the historically high river levels, we've had the Bonnie Carey Spillway open not just twice in successive years for the first time ever, but twice in the same year for the first time ever. And this is having an adverse impact on fisheries, finfish, oysters, crabs, shrimp, you name it. But we're also having problems off of the Atchafalaya River in the Vermilion Bay in that area. So I did send a letter to the Secretary of Commerce last week on June 13th asking him for an emergency declaration for fisheries here. And we are still collecting information through the Wildlife and Fisheries Agency, and they're going to be supplementing our request with additional data as it becomes available. But we thought it was important to put him on notice of the existence of the emergency, but also to make sure that everyone engaged in the fishing industry in Louisiana knows that we are asking for that assistance. And so I think it's important, and I'm very hopeful and optimistic that assistance is forthcoming.
Gerald in New Orleans. Hello, Gerald. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hi, Governor. I saw earlier this week you signed a bunch of bills when you were in New York. I'm just a little confused because I thought that the lieutenant governor does that when you're out of state. Can you?
Yeah, Gerald, I didn't sign any bills when I was in New York. Now, there may have been some a press release that was issued while I was in New York that pertained to bills that I signed before I left, but I didn't sign any bills while I was in New York.
Okay, thank you, Gerald. And Pat Forbes, as mentioned, if you heard the first segment, is with us, who heads the Office of Community Development, and there is a major development regarding the benefits available from the historic flood of 2016. And Pat, for those who might have heard you or not in the first segment, I know you have some information as far as how people can inquire if they so choose.
Right. Thanks, Jim. If people are wondering what their situation is, how the new guidance will affect them and their particular situation, their file, they don't have to do anything right now. The program will reach out to them and talk about their specific circumstances once we have perfect clarity on this guidance from HUD. But if people have questions and they want to know what we know right now, they can call 866-735-2001, or they can go to restore.la.gov and continue to access information there, and even sign up for notices from us as we get new
You
information.
might want to give those again.
Certainly, the number is 866-735-2001, and the website is restore.la.gov.
And we're almost halfway through this hour, and we're shortly going to a break. So we will go to the people who are waiting patiently, and I know some of you have been waiting for a few minutes to talk with the governor. And as mentioned, the governor is here to take questions of all kinds, and so far we've gotten quite a few from many people on many subjects, as we always do, and we appreciate your participation in the program. Again, the number for Ask the Governor is 877-217-5757, show number 39 with Governor John Bel Edwards. And Governor Edwards, I know you come in here every month not knowing what in the world's going to happen.
I don't, but I think it's important to do this.
All right, we'll be back after this short pause on your local station. Thank you for listening to Ask the Governor. Pat Forbes and Governor John Bel Edwards in-house. Again, 877-217-5757. We're back after this short time out. Ask the Governor. J.C. Kane is producing, and Governor John Bel Edwards and Pat Forbes, who heads the Office of Community Development in Louisiana. They are with us. Get a busy signal. Please be patient. All lines are full at the moment, but we'll go through as many calls as we can in our remaining half hour. 877-217-5757. Mary in New Orleans. Hi, Mary. You're on Ask the Governor. Good afternoon to you. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Mary.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for taking my call. And first, I'd like to encourage the governor that he's doing a blessed job. He's blessing the minority of people and especially the elderly. Well, I'm an 81-year-old lady, and I was calling to see if there is any information to get some help with repair things on my home. I can't afford to pay anyone right now, and I'm on a fixed income.
Mary, I'm going to encourage you to contact the Council on Aging for Orleans Parish, and if they don't have resources immediately available, they are a great source of information, and they can potentially refer you to organizations, agencies that do have the resources available to assist you. And I know that there are programs out there. I don't know your particular circumstances, and I don't know all the requirements for the programs, so it would be very difficult for me to answer your question on the air. If you're still on, Mary, I'd encourage you to give Micah your information so that he can make sure that we can connect you with individuals in New Orleans who might be able to assist you. But I really do appreciate your call, Mary.
Thank you, Mary. Ellis in New Orleans. Hello, Ellis. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Governor, for doing your Ask the Governor every month. I listen pretty much every month. It's a great service you provide. I wanted to ask your impressions. I know you were at the Whitney Museum yesterday for their Juneteenth celebrations, and I wanted to know your impressions of that museum and what they're doing, and also how we could tie that into improving the education of our youth going forward in terms of the legacy of slavery going forward. So just wanted to get your impressions. Thank you very much.
Ellis, thank you. I was out there. I think that was my third trip to the Whitney Plantation, and for those people who have been before, there are new exhibits and there's new information, and so I would encourage you to go back. And for those of you who haven't been at all, I would encourage it. It's beautifully done. It's well done, and it tells the story of plantations in Louisiana, but from a different perspective than you normally see. This really does focus on the institution of slavery, and much of it is told from the perspective of the slaves who were there. Obviously, it should be an important part of what we study, not just in Louisiana, but around the country. And I was very gratified to see a number of young people there on the tour even though it's summertime. And so we had different church groups with young kids from all around the state of Louisiana who actually were at the Whitney yesterday. And so I would encourage schools and teachers to take advantage of the Whitney plantation and make sure that they schedule a field trip and expose their children to that information. It's part of our history, and I think we need to make sure we include it in our educational programming.
Scott in Tallahassee, Florida. Scott, good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor of Louisiana.
Hello. Hi, thank you for taking my call. Governor, I'd like to thank you for signing the law that restricts abortions. I really respect your courage for doing that. I'm sure it's not the easiest thing for you to do, considering the political climate. And also, if I may, could I ask a few quick questions in addition to that?
Sure.
Okay. First is I saw something about a minimum wage bill that you want to pass in Louisiana. I didn't really read much about that, but I was wondering, it sounds like a good idea to help people that aren't well off, but I'm wondering, is there anything in the bill that helps to offset the cost of business so that the people lower down can benefit without it hurting the business?
Well, Scott, thank you very much for your call. I appreciate it. I didn't know that this program reached into Florida, but I'm happy that you're calling from Tallahassee. And with respect to the minimum wage, one of the things that I ran on in 2015 was an increase in the minimum wage, because it's $7.25. It has been since 2009, since Congress last changed it. Louisiana is one of just a handful of states that doesn't have its own minimum wage, and I've been trying to increase it, a modest increase, but meaningful. And this year in particular, we wanted to have the legislature allow the people of Louisiana to vote on whether we would have a $9 per hour minimum wage. That ultimately was not successful in the legislature, so it's not going to happen. But I can tell you, in the states that have had modest increases in the minimum wage, there has not been any adverse impacts upon business, large or small. And in fact, the number of minimum wage jobs in most states that have increased the minimum wage have actually gone up. And we can look to our neighbor in Arkansas to the north, which is already on their third minimum wage increase since 2009, and their experience has been very positive. And by the way, the vast majority of people in Arkansas support an increase in the minimum wage, and so do the vast majority of people here in Louisiana. It's something that we should do. If Congress is going to get out of the business, and it appears that they are out of the business, then I think it's up to states, and on occasion, we need to adjust the minimum wage to reflect the additional cost of living. And it's time to do that in Louisiana. I think a $9 minimum wage is appropriate.
In Arkansas, it was the people who voted for it. Would you like a system in Louisiana where initiatives like this went to a vote of the people?
That's a two-edged sword, because there are some states that have a really hard time with all the different referenda that they have to vote on, and it's hard for them to move forward in a consistent way when they do that. And as you know, here in Louisiana, really the only thing like that we vote on as voters is the constitutional amendment, not just referendum. But states like Colorado and California do that. I could potentially support that type of a program if it's relatively limited, and so that not everything that someone dreams up and has some limited amount of support could find its way on the ballot, because I think that could be very problematic.
Now, if you are elected and have a second term, there's talk of, as there always is, of having another constitutional convention. We haven't had one in 46 years. Would that be a good idea?
Well, a constitutional convention focused on the two articles of the Constitution dealing with revenue and the budget might be in order. And there's a lot of questions about when you would have it, how you go about delegate selection, whether or not you can limit the Constitutional Convention to those two articles once you call it. And there's a disagreement among legal scholars about that. But if you'll notice, ever since we've solved our fiscal problems, you've had less people talking about a Constitutional Convention. And so obviously it's not necessary to have a new constitution to fix our problems because we've done it. We've turned that $2 billion deficit into surpluses. We've stabilized the state of Louisiana. The revenue is sufficient to pass a budget this year, for example, that had the first teacher pay raise in 10 years, that had the first net new investment in higher education in 10 years, and all with a 1% increase, by the way, in state general fund expenditures, 1%, and less than inflation. So we have done the hard work necessary to right the ship, and so you consequently have a lot less people across the state of Louisiana who are talking about the need for a constitutional convention.
Jerry in Ruston. Jerry, good afternoon. You're on with Governor Edwards.
Hi, I have a question about the tinted windows. Our police officers every day risk their lives. The least we could do is impound these cars that have tinted windows.
Jerry, thank you very much for the call. We do have laws on the books right now that limit the degree to which a window in an automobile can be tinted, and it's fairly often that law enforcement are issuing citations for this particular offense. But I would have to agree with you that there are a number of cars out there, I see them too, that appear to be in violation of those standards. But I will tell you, it is already the law of Louisiana with respect to the degree to which you can tint your windows, and they're not supposed to be so dark as to be effectively opaque.
Oliver in Baton Rouge. Hi, Oliver.
Hello there. It's an honor to be able to speak with you, Governor.
Thank you, Oliver. Appreciate your call.
Okay, I am a volunteer board member with Baton Rouge Area Alcohol and Drug Center, and we seem to be in a catch-22 situation. You know, we helped over 2,000 people in the Baton Rouge area last year during the height of this opioid crisis. We're the low-cost provider or the Medicaid provider for people with opioid addictions and so forth. And day before yesterday, several of our MCOs, managed care organizations, called us and told us that we were about to be canceled because of some certification that wasn't current. And we were aware that the certification wasn't current, and we applied as CARPS, the Center for the Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities.
Okay.
Oliver, first of all, thank you very much for volunteering, and is an extremely important undertaking that you and the other folks at the Baton Rouge Area Alcohol and Drug Center are doing, and it's a great public service, and as you know, it's very much needed. Obviously, I don't know the particular circumstances, but I'm going to ask you to give your information to Micah. I will have someone at the Department of Health who is in behavioral health, and particularly over this area, make sure that they get back in touch with you to talk you through this.
We'll be back after this timeout. Good afternoon, and thank you for being with us for the 39th edition of Ask the Governor. Governor John Bel Edwards and Pat Forbes of the Office of Community Development are here. If you have a question, 877-217-5757. Alex in New Orleans. Hi, Alex. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hi, Governor. I'm curious, in light of President Trump officially relaunching his campaign, I'm wondering if you could give an assessment of how he's done for Louisiana, and if there are any candidates so far who announced that they're running for 2020 who you might be willing to endorse or excited about based on what they might do for Louisiana.
Alex, thank you very much for the call. I am focused on my race. The election is this fall. And I will get to the presidential race at some point in 2020, just like I guess most of the country. I believe my job as governor, and I've said this from the very beginning, is to have a good working relationship with the president and the president's administration, cabinet officials, regardless of who that president is and regardless of what party they come from. Because we always, like every state, but perhaps more than most others, we need help, whether it's disaster recovery or transportation dollars, healthcare dollars, I mean, you name it. We need assistance, and I think it helps to have a good working relationship with people when you're going to go sit down and ask for assistance. And that's been my approach with respect to both President Obama, who was the president in my first year in office, and with President Trump, who's been president, since he was sworn in over the last 2.5 years or so. And by the way, I think it serves Louisiana well. And I will tell you, I've had multiple opportunities to sit down with President Obama, and I've had, I think, 9 opportunities to sit down with President Trump. And I believe it serves the people of Louisiana well, and it's consistent with the way that I believe that I should conduct myself as governor.
Raymond in Baton Rouge. Hello, Raymond. You're on Talk Louisiana. Excuse me, you're on Ask the Governor. Excuse me.
Good afternoon. How y'all doing?
Doing fine, Raymond. Thank you.
Belated Happy Father's Day to you, Governor.
Well, same to you. Thank you.
Hey, look, I live up in North Baton Rouge area, up around the airport, and our problem is we don't have a grocery store, say a Walmart or something like that in that area. We have to go to Central, Port Allen, or Baker to really make groceries. And that's been concern over the years. The Howard Park development, where the hotels is and the IHOPs and things like that in that area is pretty good. But I was wondering, what's the problem for a big chain, a grocery store coming to our area?
Raymond, thank you for the call. And I can't tell you what's informing their business decisions about where they open stores and where they don't. But I will tell you that Louisiana is not unique. There are certain areas around the country that we call food deserts, where you've got convenience stores and perhaps some fast food restaurants, but with respect to the grocery stores with lots of different vegetables and fruits and things like that, it really is a problem. I can tell you it's one of the things that I'm hopeful our Opportunity Zone program is going to assist with, because there are a number of areas in North Baton Rouge that I designated an opportunity zone. We also have a program that Pat Forbes at the Office of Community Development can talk about.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hey, Raymond. So we have $1 million in community development block grant funds that are going to be administered through the Louisiana Department of Agriculture for a healthy foods initiative. And North Baton Rouge is certainly one of the places that is under consideration for assistance there. And what it does is helps grocery stores with the infrastructure, with the equipment necessary to have fresh fruits and vegetables on hand all the time. So that is a thing that we are trying to address, and it will hopefully begin to be addressed in North Baton Rouge fairly shortly.
Lily in Baton Rouge. Hello, Lily. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm calling in regards to the heartbeat bill. If the Supreme Court does find that constitutional, how will you assist these women who are now forced into giving birth in terms of health care costs, child care costs, quality education costs, and also how will you help prevent unwanted pregnancies from happening in the first place?
Lily, thank you very much for the call. And I think most people, regardless of what side of this issue they're on, they do expect that ultimately it's going to be decided by the courts, whether it's a law here in Louisiana or elsewhere in the country. And I will tell you that we are doing things in Louisiana with respect to health care that have never been done before. For example, we've got 292,000 women with health insurance today through the Medicaid expansion, the vast majority of whom did not have it before, and many of them have never had health insurance before. And some of the other things you were talking about, early childhood education, we've just made a tremendous net new investment in the budget bill that I signed into law this week for the year that starts next year. And I think we're going to have about 1,500 additional young people in early childhood education as a result of that. And if you look at the budget as a whole for next year, with its emphasis on education, with its emphasis on healthcare, you're going to see that we're going to be doing more in Louisiana as a result of the stability that we have, the economic growth that we have, the way the economy is performing, and the revenue that we have from that. We're actually making some very good and strategic investments along the lines of what you're talking about.
Thank you, Lily. Chad in Baton Rouge. Hello, Chad. You're on with the Governor and Pat Forbes.
Hey, Governor. Nice to talk to you. I had a question. mainly just for Pat Forbes, so sorry about that. But I might have covered it already as far as duplication of benefits goes. As far as the canceled SBA loans or declined loans, I understand that it was about last year sometime in February that they actually passed that legislation with the budget to say that a canceled loan or declined loan wouldn't be a duplication of benefits. And I understand y'all probably had some work in the progress of that to move forward with it. My question, I guess, is a couple here, is that will any of the requirements be changed as far as the percentage of reimbursement or repairs still needing to be made as far as that goes? I understand it's not going to affect with the AMI income. Just wanted some comments on that.
Sure. Thanks for the call, Chad. So first, let me make sure that it's clear. The law was passed last fall, but we could not implement anything with respect to that law until they provided their official guidance, which we just unofficially got Friday and was published this morning. So we've been working since Friday to implement the changes that they're allowing us. I think I understand your question about still being able to get funds from us, and that's correct. If you were approved for an SBA loan but did not draw that amount, or you only drew a partial amount of it, and we counted the whole thing as a duplication of benefits, which was a federal requirement, we are now going to not have to count the portion that you didn't draw, we hope almost immediately. So that should free up funds for you if you have not been able to finish your house. That should free up funds for you to be able to finish repairing your house or go pay the contractors who you have gotten to do the work for you. But that is the big part of this, is that regardless of what your income is, your family income, if there are funds you didn't draw, we should be able to make those available to you now to repair your home.
Mike and Solomons. Mike.
Yes, sir. How y'all doing? I got a question for the governor concerning issue I'm having here. I live adjacent to Chevron property, and it's standing water most of the year, and I can't get them to drain this water for me, and it's causing me health issues. Is there any department with the government that would help me resolve this issue? Because I've contacted lawyers, and they want like $10,000 just to start.
Well, Mike, I need you, before you hang up, you're going to have to give your information to Micah. We're going to have to get back in touch with you, because I don't know whether the standing water is on your property as a result of some changes that they made on the Chevron property, which, I am a lawyer and I can give you legal advice, but I'm going to choose not to do that. Or whether the standing water is on the Chevron property, or whether it's a ditch, for example, that always has water in it today that didn't before, because depending on which scenario it is to what you can or can't do about it. And so, Mike, I just need you to give your information to Micah, and we will get back in touch with you using the agency that is most appropriate to try to give you the best fix to your problem, if it's possible.
Got about a minute to go, and our 18th and final caller for Governor Edwards today, Joe in New Orleans. Hi, Joe.
Good afternoon, Joe.
Hey, good afternoon, y'all. Thanks for taking my call. So I had a question regarding the surging homeless population in New Orleans. Is it related to the status of mental health care facilities?
Well, Joe, I don't know exactly what caused it. I suspect you have a lot of homeless people who do have mental health problems. You also have issues where you've got economic development in portions of New Orleans and elsewhere in Louisiana and around the country that is driving up the cost of homes to make it unaffordable. One of the things that we're working through is more investment in affordable housing in New Orleans. And one of the things I just committed to was another $26.5 million to go to New Orleans for affordable housing, in addition to other dollars that New Orleans already has, because we do recognize that this is a problem there. Certainly we don't want it to get worse. We want it to get better. And I know that this is a big priority for Mayor Cantrell as well. But thank you so much for your call, Joe.
Thank you, Joe, and thanks to all of you who called today. And the governor will be back next month. July 17th is the next date for Ask the Governor, show number 40. Until then, thanks for listening and stay tuned.